everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, good. So I'm just thrilled to be here and to see all of you uplifters and spiritual teachers, and I'm so grateful and appreciative of the contribution of Leslie creating this wonderful forum. My book is called Transforming the Nature of Health, and I will talk a little bit more about that later. But I'm going to start by telling you how I became an herbalist. And I think you will understand from that quite a lot about where I come from and who I am and my vision for transforming health. So when I was 12, which was the late 1960s, I'm 54 years old, I lived in Houston. And I was a kind of a science wonky nerd, and I used to sit around and read science fiction all the time. But I loved to ride my bicycle, and I loved to be in nature. And my parents really liked to encourage this, and so maybe once a week I would take a long bike trip, and I would just give them a map. This was way pre-cell phones, but it was also pre a lot of the worry and fearfulness that people have around their children. I'd give them a map of where I was going, and I would ride, and my favorite thing to do would be to ride out into the countryside. I had always lived in cities, and I really wanted to be out in nature. I felt such a strong internal craving for that. So I'd give them a map of where I was going, and I'd pack a lunch and take a thermos, and I'd ride. And one day, it was a beautiful sunny spring day. I believe it was April. And I don't know if any of you have ever been to Texas in the springtime, but there's really glorious, glorious wildflowers there. I came to this field maybe 10 to 12 miles outside of the city, and it was amazing. It was so beautiful. The colors were astounding, reds and blues and purples and yellows, and it was just this symphony of color that really touched me, and I had to lay down my bike and go sit in this field. And sitting in the field, I was appreciating so much. I was appreciating the warmth of the sun and the perfection of the day and this kind of gentle breeze that was blowing. Everything was right. And I was appreciating the insects. There was so much life. There was butterflies and caterpillars and roly-poly bugs and little moths and lots of beetles and bees, and everything just seemed in so much harmony. And I was so happy. And then all these flowers of all these amazing colors. And I started to think about, well, how will I tell my parents about this? This is really so gorgeous. And I had a moment of sadness when I thought, I cannot name any of these flowers except for dandelions in this whole field. And I thought, well, my parents probably couldn't name them either. They don't know them either. And how is it that I can be so disconnected that I don't even know what these beautiful flowers are? And I know what some of the insects are, but most of them I don't. And I just kind of sat with that, and that feeling passed. And then I got back again to a peaceful state, and then something happened, which was really one of the pivotal moments of my life. And I understand now that it was an expansion of an awareness, and it was expansion of consciousness to a broader state of consciousness. And it's something, these broader states of consciousness, these states of expanded awareness, are something that are available to us all the time. And at that time, it just happened to me. But now I've learned how to cultivate those. I've learned how to teach people how to develop those and develop those awareness for themselves. But this was exciting. And I felt not just my love for the sun and for the field of flowers and for the insects, but I felt their love for me. And it felt very personal and very real. And I knew that I was connected with every single thing on the planet. I knew I was connected with everything in that field, and everything had life in it. The rocks and the trees and the insects, and we all had a place and a purpose. And that interconnection ran through everything, and that at the heart of that was love, and that love was really profound. And it was astounding, and I really sat with that and breathed and just was with it for quite a while. And then eventually I got up and got back on my bicycle and went home, and I didn't really talk to my parents about that. I told them how pretty the field was, but I felt that was too personal for me, and I needed to even further to digest that experience. So I stayed kind of a mystical kid. Oh, but the most important thing, one of the most important things that happened in that field is that the flowers and the plants said to me, and they didn't say it with words, they said it really in my heart. It was my understanding, we will teach you. And I accepted. I accepted wholeheartedly. I want to learn. And I knew that the learning of that was something very precious, and it was something about that feeling in my heart, that feeling of wholeness and interconnectedness. And that really is the essence of what they had to teach, and that was the thread of gold. When I feel that feeling of wholeness, and when I feel that feeling of love, I know that it's nature teaching me. I know that it's the sun, that it's the planets, that it's the health, and that we all have an innate knowing of health. So what is healing? Healing really comes from the word wholeness. So healing means to become whole, to bring wholeness to ourselves. So I meandered through my teenage years, and I still was a kind of mystical science wonk, science fiction, nerdy kid, but I was really touched in some ways, and I had some other experiences that were like this. So I went to college and went to graduate school, and in graduate school I studied comparative religions, and really I was studying comparative mysticism. And there was a lot of take-home points from this, but the thing that I want to bring forward right now that was so important is that every spiritual tradition talks about the intelligence of the heart. And the intelligence of the heart is really supposed to be the leader, and the intelligence of the mind is supposed to be the follower. So all of the great spiritual traditions tell us that the enlightened mind is the servant of the heart, and that we best live our lives from that heart-centered perspective. And I believe women know this, and women are automatically more attuned to this. And so I think what we're doing here is an amazing and wonderful thing, and I think you are all wonderful spiritual teachers. So I really began unconsciously thinking about and cultivating the wisdom of the heart, and then I learned more things after I decided to go to medical school. And I decided to go to medical school, perhaps naively, thinking this would be a good route to being a healer. And it's not impossible to become a healer by going to medical school, I will say that, but it's not the system that really supports it. You have to just do that in spite of that system and not because of that system. So by the end of my medical school years, I felt like the system was really broken and that we were hurting as many people as we were helping. And by the end of my residency, 3 years later, I felt that we were hurting more people than we were helping. And there was really 3 main things that I felt were the big problems. And I'm not somebody who likes to focus on the problems. I really believe and know, not even just believe, because I know that interconnectedness, that thoughts are things, and what we focus upon matters. However, it's good to know kind of a reference point for what we're moving away from. If we want to move over here to this glorious interconnected future, then kind of where are we now? What's happening? So the 3 biggest problems, which are systemic in medicine, is one, it's a war. Everything, and this is all about the language, everything is couched in a language of battle. We struggle with disease, we kill germs, we fight cancer. Everything is all about fighting. And the medical personnel, doctors, nurses, physical therapists, they're the soldiers in the world. And the armaments, the guns and ammos are the drugs and the surgeries. And so how we start to think about our bodies and how we think about our health is just wrong from the get-go. We don't think of ourselves as sacred divine beings. We don't think of ourselves as transforming individual. We don't think of health as wholeness. The second problem is that the heart is not there. It's a very intellectual field, and everything is about these studies, but the studies are very corrupt a lot of the times, and it's all based on vested interests, and so really there's very little pure science out there. And almost all science now, particularly in the biomedical sciences, is done really for vested interests who don't have a long view. So the Iroquois Federation, the great law of the Iroquois Federation, which was the northern Native American tribes on the East Coast, so it was actually matrilineal and matriarchal society by the way. And their great law was that we must consider the impact of any choice that we make upon the next 7 generations. Well, the industrial world, the medical world, doesn't even consider the impact of its choices on the next 3 years. It's a very short-term view, and it's a view that's very linked towards a very narrow understanding of profit. And it's not a profit that is going to honor our children and our children's children and our great-grandchildren. And so that is fundamentally unsound and unsustainable. And there was something else. There was a third thing. Oh, the third thing is that it's all interrelated, really. The third thing is that it's all management of disease. It's not really healing in medicine anymore. So I had this 18-year-old guy that came in to see me, and he was having heartburn, and he went to see his regular doctor, and his doctor put him on acid blockers, and he said to his doctor, like, that's it? I should just take acid blockers? I'm 18 years old. And the doctor said, yeah, you have heartburn, you should take acid blockers. And he said, well, don't I need stomach acid? I mean, I'm 18 years old. Do you think I'm just going to take acid blockers for the rest of my life? He was kind of astounded. So he came to see me, and he also said, he talked to a gastroenterologist, and the gastroenterologist, I kid you not, they say this all the time, said, it doesn't matter what you eat. And he says, really, like if I eat Pop-Tarts and donuts versus eating whole foods and vegetables and eggs, really there's no difference? And the gastroenterologist said no. And I have heard this before, too, from many patients, and I think, oh my God. Where are we? So there is this way that medicine no longer looks for root causes, because root causes mean people are healed, they become whole, they don't need medications and surgery, and this whole machine, this whole industrial machine that we've set up, it's very linked to the machines of industrial agriculture. All right, so that's the point of reference, but we're at a tipping point now, and that tipping point is well underway, and I am a perpetual optimist. And when I went to medical school, which was just the early 1980s, there wasn't any widespread alternative medicine. There was a few chiropractors, or many chiropractors, who were really derided by the Western medical profession, the MDs, and then there was occasional acupuncturists, and that was it. Then there was lay herbalists and lay midwives, but it was all kind of outside of the scope of things. Nobody had ever heard of Andrew Weil, the Dr. Eisenberg, who wrote the article that talked about development of alternative medicines. He hadn't even thought of that article yet. And I was already an herbalist and a practicing herbalist for many years at that time. But today we have a really different situation. We have new medicine that is really coming up all through the cracks. And one of the things I loved, I went to this speech by this dynamic woman, Sonia Johnson, years ago, and she said the failure of the 60s revolution was that we didn't start coming up through the cracks and building a new society in the cracks where things were missing. And I think that is what's happening with the alternative medicine movement. In alternative medicine, there's so much breadth to it, and there's so much potential for it. There's very gentle remedies. They're very healing remedies. It looks for wholeness. It looks for root causes. There's homeopathic remedies. There's looking at nutrition. There's looking at the interrelationship between our thoughts and our foods and our behaviors. And all of those things matter so much. So in my practice, I work a lot with things that Western medicine will just like, well, it's always at, like flower essences or aromatherapy. Two very different things, by the way. Flower essences, there's no scent to them at all. Aromatherapy is essential oils. And there's really power in these, and they honor the 7th generation. So there's not the pressure on the plants, and there's not the pressure on the planet. And I wouldn't work with these things if they weren't effective. But what I'm seeing is that there's more and more people understanding the interconnectedness of all of this, that interconnectedness with the planet, and the importance of heart-centered living. All right. Let's see what I wrote here. Okay. So we're over here. So 2 other people I want to mention because I think that it helps helps us to understand thoughts and focus and changing our thoughts. So when we think about our health, we want to think about health, wholeness, love. We want to have a different way of understanding things. And we want to really focus on the dream. So if you think about Martin Luther King, the I Have a Dream speech, all right? He was talking about his vision. And that speech was so electrified because it was about a vision. And then another person, less famous and less well known, but still someone of great heart, Peace Pilgrim, who walked the United States through the 50s, through the Cold War, and she believed that what would bring world peace was personal peace. So I'd like to leave you with this. This is an exercise that I often do with my patients because it helps us to connect with the wisdom of our heart, and it's easy to do. It's easy to do. People tell me, oh, I don't have time to meditate. And I say, well, do you have a minute? Well, yes, I do have a minute. All right. So this is a simple breathing exercise that you can do anytime. I can do it with eyes closed, with eyes closed or eyes open. I'm going to talk you through it, and I'm going to demonstrate it with eyes open, just so you know you can do it with eyes open, and I do. I do this with patients all the time. In my practice, while they're talking, I'm breathing. So it's based on chakras, and many of you know what chakras are, and many of you may not know what chakras are, but that doesn't matter because you can just use the anatomical areas. So there's two parts to it. There can be many parts, but we'll just do two. The first one is you're going to breathe in through the top of your head and out through your heart. And in this method here, it's of course you're breathing in through your nose or mouth and out through your nose or mouth. There's an energetic flow that you're tracking. And your heart is like a sun, so it's not just in the front part of your body, and it's not over here where it anatomically is. It's really at your breastbone. And so it's in the front body and in the back body. And in the second part, you're going to breathe in through your heart and out through your solar plexus. We all know that we really process a lot of emotions in our stomach, and people get butterflies in their stomach, or they get gut feelings, and that is where a lot of emotion is processed. And what I love about this technique, and I usually have people do it 3 to 6 times each breath, is that you can do it anywhere, and it's calming and soothing. The first one really gets you out of the spinning thoughts of your head. If you ever have done any meditation work, you know that they're always teaching you to quiet the mind. Well, how do you quiet the mind? Well, this is one quick way, and I find myself doing this all day long. And then the second is helps you to calm your nervous system, calm your gut, where so many of your emotions are processed. And so it's really a calming and soothing thing to do. And as you breathe, you can just follow your breath, but you can also think of a word like peace or ease or freedom, and breathe that in and breathe it out. So I'm going to do that now, and we're going to all do it together if you want to. So I'd like you to just sit comfortably, and doesn't have to be particularly deep breath, just your normal breath. Breathe in through the top of your head and out through your heart. Include a word if you like that. Peace, or ease, comfort. Breathe that in and breathe it out. And when you're ready, breathe in through your heart and out through your solar plexus. See how quick that is? So really, I say presses the reset button. So when you notice that you're getting stress, tension, any way that you're not really in alignment with yourself, you can just press the reset button by doing a quick exercise. So this is where I mentioned my book. So I have my book out there. You can take a look at it. There's cards for it. There's lots of exercises like that in my book, and lots of visionary information, much more about the biochemistry of all these things that I've been talking about, and much, much more. So take a look at it and see if it's for you. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you.